So if we look at how PCSE Online works, we've got this role in PCSE Online, Locum approver role. As a practice, then you can have as many of the staff in the practice that it's appropriate to have that role. Anyone who has the Locum approver role in PCSE Online will receive an email notification to the email address that they have as their username in PCSE Online. So they'll receive an email notification once the Locum has submitted an A form for the practice. But there's also, when you log into PCSE Online, you'll be aware that there's across the banner at the very top of the screen, it's highlighted on here, but there's a messages button that you can click, and you will also receive a notification into that message area in the portal. And I've put an example there of what that notification will say, and this is how the system works currently. Anyone with the Locum approval role will receive these notifications. So the example there shows you our doctor is called Dr. GPP. So if that was me and I was a GP, that would just say Dr. Venerous. So it will tell you which doctor, which GP has submitted a Locum A form for your practice. It will tell you what period the work is for, and it will tell you the amount that they've entered in the fee box. If you're in the system and you've opened up a notification and it's a new form that needs to be reviewed, then you would just click the review button and that will open up the screen that allows you to approve or reject, that we'll see in a second. And just a note at the bottom there to say that, so there's a reminder notification that's currently set at the 8-week point. So if a Locum GP has submitted an A form to practice and it hasn't been approved at the 56 days point after the end date of the period of work, then there'll be an automatic notification will go out as a reminder to say, please can you approve this Locum A form, so that the GP can comply with the 10-week rule, because when you've approved it, they will get a message into their account and they'll be able to go and submit the B form. Until you have approved it or accepted it, then they can't do that. So they're not able to pension their income until you've actually approved it. So when we've opened up the form, then we will click the review button in PCSE Online. Then what you'll see is any outstanding forms that are waiting for review. So in this, these are all just test data, but just to give you examples, you can see here we're able to either click approve or reject. If I click approve, I just click submit and we've got the form approved and submitted. That's all the person in the practice with the approver role has to do. Or if we have to reject the form, we just click reject and there's a little box that you can just see the bottom of the screen there where I can type some text as a free text. So incorrect fee or incorrect dates, whatever reason would be that you would say, I can't accept this form because it's not what I was expecting to see on it. Dates are the wrong fees or whatever on. I don't know if that happens regularly or if it happens once in a blue moon, but we've obviously got the box there. So that's the simple step that you undertake. And then when you've done that, or at any point, when you're in PCSE Online, you'll have a Locum Work button. So you'll have clicked on Locum Work to get to the Locum section. And there's another button called Locum Listing. And when you click on this Locum Listing button, then you'll have this search facility. So you can see here that you can enter the GP's name, you can enter the GMC number if it is a GP. The easiest, we find the easiest way to search is to enter the GMC numbers, and that would allow me, if I've got various locums working at the practice, that would allow you to search for the forms for a particular GP. You can filter it by form type, but from a practice point of view, you would only be looking at Form A's. The screen functionality is shared with internal users who can obviously see from a PCSE perspective, say, A and B forms, but you'll be looking at purely Form A's. But you can also search by submission date. So if you have a locum who says to you, I've submitted a form earlier on this week, then you can put the date in if you wish and just click search. But essentially, I think the most common use would be to put the GMC number in if you have more than one locum at the practice. So when you search, then that will bring and retrieve for you all of the forms for that particular locum if we've searched on their GMC number, or all of the forms submitted from a particular date, or in a date window if we're looking for multiple GPs. And then we have the option to open any of those forms that we return on that listing screen. So when we open the forms, if there's an outstanding form that we haven't actually reviewed yet, then it would just display the approve and reject buttons like we saw earlier. But if we've already approved it and we're just checking back to make sure or double check what we've done, then you'll see that it actually shows as approved as another example. And if we've had to reject a form, then you'll see that it shows as rejected. And I think there is another scenario if for any reason your locum has submitted the form in time for the 10 weeks, so they've submitted it within the 10-week window, so it's come through successfully. It hasn't been stopped at their end because it was within 10 weeks when they've generated it and submitted it. But if it hasn't been approved or reviewed by the practice, at least approved or rejected, and then the 10 weeks passes, then there will be a different message here in terms of the form's status to say that it's expired. It can no longer be approved or rejected. It has passed its 10 weeks window. So that's the other scenario that you would have. But obviously, if we make sure that practices have multiple users who have the locum approval role, and we make sure that it's decided among a practice team who's primarily going to take responsibility for keeping a check on these things, then we should never have to get to that scenario. So just getting on to user management then. So the role there, when a user manager gets a list of roles that they can assign to somebody in a GP practice, that includes this role that's on the screen there, GPP locum approval. So it's quite easy to see which role it is that's needed. And the user administrator can assign that role to an existing user. So somebody who already has a PCSE online account, they can use the user management screen to search for the user, so they could put the email address of a practice colleague who maybe already has a role for completing joiner forms or estimates, etc. They can search for anyone who has a PCSE online account, just enter the email address that that person uses to access PCSE online, and when we click apply, that will then return their PCSE online account details, and our user administrator or user manager will be able to then tick this locum approvals box and click save, submit, and that person's record will be updated. So the next time our colleague logs in, then they will be able to see this locum button and locum area and conduct the approval step that we've gone through, but also as locums start to submit forms for the future, then they will get these notifications that we talked about at the beginning. So easy to assign that to an existing user. And if you have a colleague in the practice who, for whatever reason, doesn't already have a PCSE online account, then the user manager can, through the create user function, add their details in, including the email address, their NHS Net account, or whatever address, but usually for a practice user, it'll be an NHS Net account that they're going to use to access it, and then their account's set up. The role is assigned as part of the setup, and when they've gone and verified their email address, then that user would also be able to start to carry out the locum approver steps or review the locum A forms and approve or reject accordingly.